I never thought I would find myself walking down the neon-lit streets of Pattaya at 2 in the morning, questioning everything I believed about myself and my moral compass. The humid air carried a mixture of street food aromas, motorcycle exhaust, and something else I could not quite identify, something that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the city itself. The journey that brought me to Thailand had begun months earlier with a fascination for Muay Thai kickboxing. I had been training for years back home, watching countless videos of legendary fighters like Samart Karun and Diesel Noi, dreaming of experiencing the authentic martial arts culture where it all began. Thailand represented something pure to me then, a place where ancient traditions met modern dedication, where warriors were forged through discipline and respect. I had read every book one could find about Thai boxing culture, studied the spiritual aspects of the art, learned about the traditional music that accompanied fights, and the deep respect fighters showed to their teachers and ancestors. The Wai Kru Ram Moye, the pre-fight ritual dance, fascinated me as much as the technical aspects of kicks and clinch work. My initial plan was straightforward and, I thought, morally unambiguous. I would spend 3 weeks in Thailand, train at authentic camps in Bangkok and perhaps venture north to Chiang Mai. Visit temples to understand the Buddhist philosophy that underpinned the martial arts culture. Experience the real Thailand, and return home with stories of spiritual growth and physical achievement. The bar scene, the nightlife, the aspects of Thailand that drew so many Western men for reasons I considered base and shallow. These held no appeal for me whatsoever. I considered myself above such pursuits, someone who travelled for authentic experiences rather than the kind of pleasure-seeking that gave tourists a bad reputation. My friends back home had made jokes about Thai massage parlours and bar girls when I announced my travel plans. I had responded with righteous indignation, explaining that I was going to Thailand to train with real fighters, to learn from monks, to experience a culture that valued discipline and spiritual development. Their knowing smirks and crude comments only reinforced my determination to prove that meaningful travel was about personal growth, not hedonistic indulgence. Bangkok had reinforced these convictions during my first week with almost religious intensity. The training camps were everything I had hoped for, and more. Brutal and transformative in ways that pushed my physical and mental limits beyond anything I had experienced. The morning sessions began before dawn, with roadwork through the humid streets, followed by hours of pad work, heavy bag training, and sparring that left me exhausted but exhilarated. The trainers, weathered men who had fought professionally for decades, pushed me harder than I had ever been pushed, but with a patience and wisdom that came from deep understanding of their art. The monks at the temples spoke of mindfulness and inner peace with a simplicity that cut through years of Western psychological complexity. At Wat Pho, an elderly monk named Frey Somchai spent an afternoon teaching me about the Buddhist concept of impermanence, how attachment to fixed ideas about ourselves and our lives created suffering. His words seemed prophetic in retrospect, though at the time I interpreted them only in terms of my martial arts training and meditation practice. Even the massage parlours I visited were legitimate therapeutic experiences that reinforced my sense of moral superiority. Elderly Thai women with hands like iron worked out the knots from intense training sessions with professional skill and maternal care that reminded me of my grandmother's healing touch. These were not the seedy establishments of Western imagination, but traditional healing centres, where therapeutic massage was practiced as a respected art form passed down through generations. I felt vindicated in my approach during those first 7 days, proud of my restraint and focus, convinced that I was experiencing the real Thailand while other tourists wasted their time and money on shallow pleasures. I wrote long emails to friends back home describing the purity of my experience, the spiritual insights I was gaining, the authentic connections I was making with Thai culture through its most noble expressions. The decision to visit Pattaya came from other travellers at my Bangkok hostel, a mix of gap year students, digital nomads, and long-term backpackers who had been exploring Southeast Asia for months or even years. They spoke of Pattaya as a necessary Thai experience, a place where the country's energy reached its most intense peak, where the famous Thai hospitality and zest for life could be experienced in its most concentrated form. They described the beaches as some of the most beautiful in the region, the food as incredible even by Thai standards, the 24-hour atmosphere that never slept as something uniquely energizing and alive. What they did not emphasize, or perhaps what I chose not to hear in my selective listening, were the other attractions that made Pattaya famous worldwide. When they mentioned the nightlife, I assumed they meant the kind of bars and clubs that existed in any tourist destination. When they talked about the entertainment, I imagined cultural shows and perhaps some lively music venues. My ability to filter information through my preconceptions was remarkably thorough. One traveller, a British guy named James, who had been in Thailand for 6 months, tried to give me what I now realise was a gentle warning about Pattaya's reputation and the culture shock I might experience. He mentioned that it was quite different from Bangkok, that the nightlife scene was more intense and commercialised, that I should keep an open mind about what I might encounter. But his diplomatic language failed to penetrate my certainty about the kind of traveller I was and the kind of experiences I was seeking. The bus ride from Bangkok to Pattaya took 2 hours through increasingly tropical landscapes that seemed to grow more lush and vibrant with each passing kilometre. Palm trees replaced concrete high-rises, and the air grew thick with humidity and salt that spoke of nearby ocean. Rice paddies stretched toward distant mountains, and small villages appeared and disappeared like scenes from a travel documentary. I watched the scenery change through the window, still convinced I would maintain my disciplined approach to travel, that Pattaya would simply be another stop on my journey of cultural discovery and personal development. I had booked a modest hotel near the beach through a budget travel website, choosing it specifically because it was described as quiet and family-friendly rather than party-oriented. The photos showed a simple but clean property with a small pool and restaurant, the kind of place where I could continue my training routine, maybe enjoy some seafood and local culture, then move on to my next destination with my moral framework intact. The reviews mentioned the nearby beaches and local markets, but said nothing about the entertainment districts that would soon challenge everything I believed about myself. Walking from the bus station to my hotel with my backpack and training gear, the first thing that struck me was the energy pulsing through the afternoon air. Bangkok had been busy, chaotic, alive with the frenetic pace of a major Asian metropolis, but Pattaya pulsed with something different, something more focused and purposeful. Even in the oppressive afternoon heat, there was an undercurrent of anticipation, as if the entire city was holding its breath for nightfall, preparing for some transformation that occurred with the setting sun. The streets were cleaner than Bangkok, more organised, but also more purposeful in a way I could not yet define. The architecture was different too, more resort-like, with an abundance of hotels, restaurants, and shops that seemed designed for leisure rather than the business and residential focus of the capital. Signs in multiple languages advertised services I recognised, and others that seemed vaguely mysterious. Tour companies offered day trips to nearby islands, cooking classes, cultural shows, and other activities that seemed innocent enough. My hotel was simple but comfortable, a few blocks from the famous walking street, though I did not yet understand the significance of that proximity, or what Walking Street actually represented in Pattaya's ecosystem of entertainment and commerce. The lobby was air-conditioned relief from the heat, decorated with traditional Thai art and staffed by friendly young people who seemed genuinely pleased to welcome guests. The receptionist, a young Thai woman named Ploy with excellent English and a warm smile, welcomed me with the kind of hospitality that made Thailand famous among travellers. She provided a map highlighting restaurants, beaches, and tourist attractions, explaining the best times to visit each location and offering recommendations based on my interests in martial arts and culture. She also circled several areas in red, explaining with a knowing smile that seemed to contain layers of meaning. I did not yet understand that these were the entertainment districts, places that came alive after dark and offered a different kind of cultural experience. That first afternoon, I explored the beach with the enthusiasm of someone discovering paradise. The sand was white and soft, the water warm and clear, with gentle waves that invited swimming rather than demanding respect like the ocean back home. Local vendors sold fresh fruit and grilled seafood that surpassed anything I had experienced in Bangkok. Mango sticky rice, grilled prawns the size of small lobsters, fresh coconut water served in the shell, all prepared with a skill and attention to flavour that elevated street food to art. Children played in the waves while their parents relaxed under colourful umbrellas, and elderly Thai couples walked hand in hand along the water's edge as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It seemed like paradise, innocent and rejuvenating, the kind of place where stress dissolved and life simplified to its most essential pleasures. I swam until the salt water stung my training sore muscles, then lay on the sand reading about Thai history and culture, convinced that Pattaya could be just another stop on my journey of authentic discovery. As evening approached, I noticed the transformation beginning with subtle changes that gradually became impossible to ignore. The casual beachgoers, families with children, and elderly couples began to give way to different crowds. Men, mostly Western, mostly middle-aged, began appearing in greater numbers. They walked with purpose rather than the relaxed pace of typical tourists, dressed more carefully in pressed shirts and clean shoes rather than the casual beachwear of the afternoon crowd. There was something in their eyes that I recognized but did not want to acknowledge. A look of anticipation and possibility that spoke of plans and expectations I could not quite identify. They looked like men with specific destinations in mind, men who knew exactly why they had come to Pattaya and what they hoped to find there. Some travelled in small groups, talking quietly among themselves, while others walked alone with the confidence of people following familiar routines. I returned to my hotel for dinner, determined to maintain my routine of healthy eating, early rest, and morning training. The hotel restaurant served excellent Thai cuisine, and I sat alone at a table overlooking the pool, reviewing my training notes from Bangkok and planning the next day's activities. I had identified a Muay Thai gym within walking distance and planned to spend the morning there, then visit some local temples in the afternoon before returning to Bangkok to continue my original itinerary. But the sounds from the street grew louder and more complex as darkness fell completely. Music poured from multiple directions, not the traditional Thai music I had grown to love, but contemporary pop, rock, and electronic dance music that created a sonic landscape unlike anything I had experienced. Laughter and voices calling in multiple languages, the rumble of motorcycles and tuk-tuks carrying passengers towards some unseen destination, the general buzz of a city preparing for its primary business of the day. Curiosity, I told myself, was natural and even admirable in a traveller. I was an observer of culture, someone interested in understanding all aspects of the places I visited. Limiting myself to temples and training camps while ignoring other significant aspects of local life would be artificial and incomplete. These rationalizations came easily as I finished my meal and decided to take a brief walk through the entertainment district, just to see what all the excitement was about. To understand this aspect of Thai culture from an anthropological perspective, Walking Street revealed itself gradually, like a theatre curtain rising on an elaborate production. The first block seemed almost tame, restaurants and bars that could exist in any tourist destination anywhere in the world. Western food, familiar beer brands, music that would not have been out of place in any college town back home. But with each step deeper into the district, the atmosphere intensified and transformed into something entirely unique. Neon signs advertised services in languages I recognized and others I did not, creating a visual symphony of color and light that competed for attention with increasing intensity. Music poured from open doorways, competing rhythms creating a chaotic symphony that somehow worked together to create an overall atmosphere of excitement and possibility. The crowds grew thicker and more diverse, tourists from dozens of countries mixing with locals in a way that seemed both natural and carefully orchestrated. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, were beautiful Thai women. They stood outside bars and clubs, dressed in everything from elegant evening wear that would not have been out of place at an upscale restaurant, to barely their outfits that left nothing to imagination and everything to desire. They smiled at passing men with professional warmth, called out greetings in accented English that somehow made even simple phrases sound exotic and inviting, and moved with a confidence that was both inviting and unmistakably professional. I had never seen anything like it, this open marketplace of attraction and possibility, where desire was acknowledged, advertised, and available for negotiation. The directness was shocking to someone raised in a culture where such things happened behind closed doors with layers of pretense and denial. Here, everything was open, honest, and, surprisingly, non-threatening, despite the obvious commercial nature of the interactions. My moral certainty began to crack almost immediately under the weight of reality that did not match my preconceptions. These women were not victims as I had imagined from sensationalized stories back home. Desperate souls trapped in unfortunate circumstances by poverty or coercion. They laughed with genuine warmth, negotiated with business-like efficiency, and seemed to enjoy their work in ways that challenged every assumption I brought to Thailand about commercialized intimacy and female agency. They were entrepreneurs in the truest sense, artists of human connection who would turn natural assets and social skills into profitable businesses. They spoke multiple languages, understood cross-cultural communication better than most diplomats, and managed complex relationships with multiple clients while maintaining their own boundaries and personal lives. The more I observed, the more my simple moral categories seemed inadequate to describe what I was witnessing. I found myself stopping at a bar called Sensations, drawn by live music that featured a Thai woman singing American pop songs with remarkable skill, and the sight of other women dancing on a small stage with athletic grace that reminded me of the martial arts forms I had been studying. The movement was controlled, powerful, and beautiful, in ways that transcended its obvious commercial purpose. The bartender, a man from Australia who had clearly been in Pattaya for years, based on his casual familiarity with the environment and fluent Thai, welcomed me with the knowing look of someone who recognized a newcomer struggling with preconceptions and moral confusion. His name was Dave, and he had come to Thailand 15 years earlier for a 2-week vacation that had somehow become a permanent lifestyle change. The beer was cold, the music was good, and the atmosphere was surprisingly relaxed despite the obvious commercial undercurrents. Men sat at tables talking with women who seemed genuinely interested in conversation rather than simply going through the motions of professional charm. There was flirtation, certainly, and an undercurrent of commerce that was never completely absent, but also real human connection, laughter, and the kind of social interaction that happens anywhere people gather to drink and socialize. These were not the desperate transactions I had imagined, but something more complex, more nuanced, more human than my preconceptions had allowed. The women chose their clients as much as they were chosen, engaging with men who treated them with respect while politely deflecting those who did not meet their standards. The power dynamics were more balanced than I had expected, with women clearly maintaining significant control over their interactions and working conditions. A woman named Nim approached my table with a smile that seemed to light up the entire bar and immediately challenged my ability to maintain emotional distance from what I was observing. She was perhaps 25, with long black hair that caught the coloured lights and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and humour that seemed completely genuine rather than professionally manufactured. Her English was excellent, and she asked about my travels with what seemed like authentic curiosity rather than scripted small talk designed to encourage spending. We talked for over an hour about everything from Thai food to American movies to the differences between Bangkok and Pattaya nightlife, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the conversation in ways that had nothing to do with her obvious beauty or the commercial context of our meeting. She was intelligent, funny, and surprisingly knowledgeable about world events, American politics, and cultural differences between East and West. She explained the bar system to me with patient amusement at my obvious confusion and moral discomfort. The women worked on commission, earning money when customers bought them drinks, but they were free to choose their clients and set their own boundaries about what services they would provide and under what circumstances. Many were students or single mothers supporting families, using their natural charm and English skills to earn better money than traditional jobs provided in a developing economy with limited opportunities for women without advanced education. It was business, but it was also social interaction, entertainment, and sometimes genuine connection between people who might never have met under other circumstances. The artificial boundaries between commercial and personal relationships seemed less meaningful in a context where honesty about financial considerations actually created space for authentic emotions to develop without pretense or false expectations. When Nim asked if I would like to buy her a drink, I found myself saying yes without the internal debate I expected, drawn by her personality as much as her beauty. When she asked if I would like her company for the evening, explaining the arrangement with the same straightforward honesty she had used to discuss everything else, the moral framework I had constructed began to crumble entirely under the weight of human complexity that refused to fit into simple C categories. She was beautiful, intelligent, funny, and interested in me as a person, not just a customer with money to spend. The artificial boundaries I had created between authentic travel and human connection seemed suddenly arbitrary and self-defeating, based more on abstract moral principles than actual human experience. Here was a real person offering real companionship in exchange for fair compensation, and my refusal seemed more about maintaining ideological purity than making ethical choices. I told her I needed time to think, that this was all new to me, and challenged assumptions I had held for years about relationships, travel, and moral behavior. She laughed, not mockingly, but with understanding that suggested she had encountered many travelers struggling with similar conflicts between preconceptions and reality. She told me she would be working at the same bar tomorrow night if I wanted to continue our conversation, and that there was no pressure to make any decisions I was not comfortable with. As I walked back to my hotel through streets that now seemed less foreign and more full of human possibility, I realized that everything I thought I knew about Thailand, about travel, and about myself was about to change in ways I could not yet imagine. The moral certainty that had guided my travels felt less like wisdom and more like limitation, a set of arbitrary rules that prevented genuine experience and connection. The next morning brought no clarity, only more questions and a growing awareness that my original travel plans might be inadequate to address the complexity of what I was discovering about myself and the world. I went through my usual routine, training at a local gym where the equipment was basic but functional, eating healthy meals at restaurants that served authentic Thai cuisine to locals rather than tourists, reading about Thai culture and history in an attempt to understand the context for what I was experiencing. But underneath the familiar activities, something fundamental had shifted in my understanding of myself and my relationship to the world. The moral certainty that had guided my travels felt less like wisdom and more like fear, a set of limitations that prevented authentic experience in favor of ideological purity. The women I had met the night before had challenged my assumptions, not through argument, but through their simple humanity, their refusal to fit into the victim categories my culture had created for them. I spent the day at the beach again, but this time I noticed things differently with eyes that were beginning to see beyond my preconceptions. The Western men I had judged the day before now seemed less predatory and more lonely, many of them older, divorced, or widowed, seeking connection in a place where their age and appearance were not barriers to companionship. They were not monsters, but human beings, with needs for affection, conversation, and intimacy that their home cultures did not always accommodate. The Thai women who worked in the entertainment industry were not victims, but participants in a complex economy of human needs and desires that served important functions for both locals and visitors. They provided companionship, cultural bridge building, language practice, and genuine human connection in addition to whatever physical services they might offer. Their work was more complex and valuable than simple stereotypes suggested. That evening, I returned to sensations with less internal conflict and more honest curiosity about where this experience might lead. Nim was there as promised, and her face lit up when she saw me in a way that seemed to transcend professional obligation. We picked up our conversation from the night before, but this time I was more present, less concerned with maintaining my moral distance, and more interested in understanding her perspective and experience. She told me about her life with the kind of openness that suggested real trust was developing between us. Her family lived in Isan province, one of the poorest regions of Thailand, where her father grew rice and her mother sold vegetables in the local market. She had been a teacher in her village for 3 years after finishing university, but the salary was barely enough to support herself, let alone help her family or save money for the future she wanted to build. Coming to Pattaya had been a difficult decision that involved leaving behind everything familiar for an uncertain future in a city with a reputation that made her parents worry. But the money she could earn in 6 months working in the entertainment industry equaled what she would make in 3 years teaching, and it allowed her to send money home while saving for her dream of opening her own business someday. I told her about my kickboxing training, my work back home in a job that paid well but left me feeling empty, my fears and hopes for the future that seemed increasingly disconnected from the life I was actually living. The conversation felt real in a way that surprised me, more honest and meaningful than most interactions I had with people in my regular life who shared my background and supposedly my values. The connection felt genuine in a way that challenged every assumption I had brought to Thailand about commercialized intimacy and authentic human connection. This was not the hollow transaction I'd expected, but genuine human interaction complicated by circumstance and cultural difference, but not diminished by them. When she asked again if I would like her company for the evening, I found myself nodding before my rational mind could interfere with analysis and moral calculation. The negotiation was straightforward and honest in ways that Western dating culture rarely achieved. She explained her rates, what was included, what boundaries existed, and what additional arrangements might be possible if we both felt comfortable. There was no shame in the discussion, no pretense that this was anything other than a business arrangement that might also be personally meaningful for both of us. The bar fine was paid to compensate the establishment for losing her earning potential for the evening, and we left together into the neon-lit streets of Pattaya with an excitement that felt both nervous and natural. Walking beside her through crowds of tourists and locals, I felt like I was crossing a threshold that would change everything about how I understood myself and my relationship to the world. What happened next challenged every assumption I had brought to Thailand about commercialized intimacy and authentic human connection. Nim took me not to a cheap hotel room designed for quick transactions, but to her own apartment, a modest but comfortable place she shared with 2 other women who worked in similar jobs. The apartment was clean, decorated with personal touches, and felt like a real home rather than a place of business. She introduced me to her roommates with pride, not embarrassment, and they welcomed me with genuine warmth that suggested this was not unusual, but also not casual. One was studying business administration at a local university while working nights to pay for her education. The other was saving money to open a restaurant in her hometown. They were intelligent, ambitious women using available opportunities to build better futures for themselves and their families. We talked for hours before anything physical happened, sitting on her small balcony overlooking the city lights, or she showed me photos of her family, her village, her previous life as a teacher before economic necessity brought her to Pattaya. I shared stories of my own family, my struggles with career and relationships, my reasons for coming to Thailand that now seemed incomplete and overly focused on abstract ideals rather than human connection. The intimacy that eventually developed felt like a natural extension of emotional connection rather than a purchased service. She was passionate, generous, and completely present in ways that made the experience feel like genuine romance rather than commercial transaction. The boundaries between business and personal dissolved in the face of authentic human connection that transcended the circumstances that had brought us together. The next morning, I woke up in an unfamiliar bed next to a woman whose story had become intertwined with my own overnight, in ways that challenged everything I thought I knew about relationships, travel, and authentic experience. There was no awkwardness, no regret, only a sense of having crossed a threshold I could never uncross and was not sure I wanted to. Nim made coffee and breakfast with the casual intimacy of someone comfortable in her own space, and we continued talking as if we had known each other for months rather than days. The morning light streaming through her windows illuminated a life that was more complex and meaningful than stereotypes suggested, and I began to understand that my assumptions about her work and her choices had been based on ignorance rather than knowledge.